Good, everybody. Still here. Daily Market Pulse, Hump Day, Wednesday, July 30th. We have one more day left for this particular month in this second quarter of the year. So everything finishes mixed after all this moving around today. Chop, chop, kind of the same thing as yesterday for the most part, really. I'll show you here in a minute. But the volume is also mixed. Everything's still under pressure. We have 6 and 5 on the distribution day count. So Dow Jones, let me see, is that the right date? Nope. Let's go back and update that again. There it is. So you can see it came down to the 50, bounced a little bit. So this might be where it decides to stop. The Bollinger Bands are just starting to barely open here. So there's possibly for room. So you see it's not oversold yet. It doesn't necessarily have to get under the green either. But this was a pivot area. It bounced, chopped around for a while. It's back to not really a pivot area, but as much as a little bit of a pivot area, but really lower across here. If I extend this out here, this is kind of where we're looking at in terms of that original high and series of lows, but also now it would get below the 50, which would be the first time since April in which it reversed immediately at that point and continued its trend higher. So it's going to be kind of difficult. There's several days to the downside. There's very much a spinning top here, so a lot of indecision, not quite sure what it's going to do. So we've got any direction. Now you've got a crossover of the 8 below the 20 now for the first time as well since mid to late May as well. But that's where it reversed off the 50 as well. So maybe the exact same effect that we had back then. We'll have to wait and see what they have in store for us right now. There's a little bit of a bounce. That lower shadow might signify that they want to buy, but it's not conclusive for sure. Here's the S&P, same thing. Now it's essentially still below the 20, the 8 hasn't crossed below yet. There's a little bit of a pivot area across 1960, pardon me, then all the way back down to 1925. Those are still levels to watch out for on the downside with this indecision and spinning top that we're seeing there as well. NASDAQ, interestingly, finished higher. It gapped up and finished green. This is completely opposite what we just saw on the Dow and the S&P. That's very odd, very strange, but it's between a falling window and a rising window. 4 days in an island above an 8 and a 28 moving average. No telling what it has in store for us next. It's quite unusual and strange. It's just in an island going sideways for the most part, really. Slight green today, of course, as I mentioned, but it's still sideways in that gap. TSX green in this case. Of course, I had the 8 moving average being above the price action, but it's actually not incorrect. That's just a typo. So there's more green here, oddly and interestingly, on the TSX. Looks like it still wants to go higher. It's just completely opposite what's going on in the US altogether. Interesting there. So then we have the DAX holding steady, still at 9,600 for the most part. Still looking for somewhat of a bounce, if possible, at these levels. The US dollar, Canadian dollar continues to go strong and green. Higher it goes into 109 in a pivot area into 109.50 and as high as 110 to 110.50. And there's still room. It's above the 50, above the 200 now. The 8's about to cross the 50 as well. There will be a pause at some point to allow the 20 to catch up and cross over if it's going to allow that at all. Lower shadow here on the euro. The support still remains down the 133 and a quarter area. That's still the target. Possible bounce in here, but not likely. Look at the treasuries. They ran into that resistance area across 138, almost 139, and then whack, just a huge drop it back to the 20, back to the top bottom of the channel. Interesting move there. I mean, the markets were mixed, and yet treasuries collapsed. It's very interesting, very indeed. A little bit of a divergence that's negative here on the stochastics at that time, so that certainly coincides, but it was hard to predict that. Then you've had the yen just absolutely falling apart altogether. Didn't expect that either. There's your support area, at least the pivot area that was looking to hold support. It still can hold support there. It's still possible. Otherwise, you're looking much lower into about 96 approximately down here. But see the big box formation essentially, 97. We'll call it 97. What do we want to call that? 97.50. That's a little too high, but 97.50 all the way up into 99, so 250 in terms of a range. That's a complete box. Interestingly, we'll see if it bounces here or not. Let's take a look at gold and silver next. That's just sideways holding the 50 to 200 for the time being. Nothing really earth-shattering nor decisive here either. Silver, same thing, holding the 200, rising 50 directly beneath it. Crude decided it wanted to sell off some more, and it sold off fairly aggressively. Bounced a little bit off the low. You see that lower shadow. A little bit of a bounce near the end. So support into the 99 area is what's expected for the time being. We look at small caps being risk on or risk off. Right now, clearly more neutral, slight risk on, but really neutral, same as we saw earlier with the NASDAQ and everything else in a window. Support below with a falling window directly above, and at the 1 to 4, essentially the 114 to 113 area, $1 range is currently existing in. And then the VIX did pop, finished a little on the green side, made a new high today to 14. It still looks like it's rambunctious, wanting to go higher. So that usually means lower for the markets. We'll see if that's the case. Treasuries were down, VIX was up. That's usually not the case. They usually go together. So a little bit of weirdness today, but it is also month end. And so there's going to be some change in terms of portfolio and so on. So there's going to be some weirdness probably going into the into tomorrow and then the end of the week as well.